Welcome to the Data Friday. My name is Michael Schimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. We have the session here every Friday, 11 o'clock Central European Standard Time, to allow you, the audience, to ask questions about data vault, data-driven applications, cloud computing, MPP computing, data mining, everything data-driven, essentially. And all the questions are allowed. You can use a chat here in the client. You can use a Q&A function in the client to raise a live question. You can also use your virtual hand, raise it, and I'll give you a voice. Or I'll show you a form after today's session where you can submit your questions, maybe upload some pictures, some drawings, and I would use that to prepare the slides as I did today, essentially. If we receive multiple questions, I would be cherry picking. We start to run low on questions. So keep shooting your questions, essentially. But I should be able to answer your question within the next 10 minutes, essentially. That's always a good recording, essentially. And if there would be no question at all, I will talk about the cluster. Don't do this because I haven't done much of it. I haven't really, it's a running joke, but don't let me come to the point where I have to admit it that I haven't done anything. So, okay. So let me just jump into the question here. So this question here, let me just read this for you for now. What are the best practices when storing the data as white tables, for example, using Iceberg, and applying data vault as a logical layer on top using views? What are things to consider to ensure good performance? And does data vault for DBT support this approach? I'm not sure because, I talked to somebody on a conference using this, using a similar topic. I'm not sure who actually sent this question here, to be honest. But here's the thing. So you could have a data vault on a data lake. We know all this, right? But what about a virtual data vault on top of a data lake? What if you have, let's say, a staging process that ingests the data from your source tables or from your source systems into your data lake? And that's your staging area. And then you put a data vault on top as views. And that's, I believe, is what the query refers to here. And that's the basic idea. So we want to virtualize the raw data vault on top of the data lake, essentially. Now, that comes in with some issues. Well, first of all, if I look at your white tables, I believe it's still the same data. It's still the same enterprise data, right? So there's no change. It's still dirty, right? You still have all the same issues that you have in a relational database and so on. So it's all the same data. There's no change there. There would be no change no matter what technology you use. If you're in the cloud, on premise, in a Snowflake database, in Iceberg tables, and so on, it's still the same data. It's number one. So all the concepts still apply regarding business rules, cleansing, transforming the data, and so on. The other thing is, there's the majority of the data will be either master data or transactional data or like reference data. That's what my assumption is. And when I look at the white table, let's say I'm looking at, for example, master data. In this case, but also for the transactional data, I would assume a white table, the majority of the attributes are descriptive attributes, especially for master data, but even for transactional data, yeah, there will be some measure values that you want to aggregate, but there will be a lot of descriptive data. The wider the table gets, the more descriptive data you will have in this transactional table. Those are the assumptions I'm making, okay? So that's how we start, which means that my answer might be true in your case or not in your case, depending on if this is true. And your table has some granularity. So there is something in this table, let's say customers or booking transactions in the bank and so on, which you can identify. Now, you could think about this. You could just visualize for example, a hub, a link, a satellite. The hub and link, they would extract the granularity of your incoming data. So that would be used to get let's say the identifier for your employee records or for your customer records, for your product records, if it's master data, or identify the codes or let's say the keys to identify your transactions. That's all essentially in the hub or link structure that you virtualize on top of these white tables. I wouldn't use hash keys because hash keys in a view, not a good idea. At least if I virtualize the hub and link, let's start with that. I would just use business keys on a model here. And then you could add the satellites. The biggest problem with the satellites I see is that what about GDPR? What about personal data, separation of personal data? In your white table, everything is in there, and that's a problem. So you have to think about that one. How do you separate personal data from the non-personal data physically? or how you prepare a logical delete using encryption or something, but then you might have another performance impact. So which might be fine. I'm just saying. So, and then what about this? What about if we virtualize as much as possible, especially the satellites? But what about the hubs and links? You could materialize them. So what if we extract the business keys, load them into a Iceberg table that we manage, a managed table, and have a distinct list of all the business keys from your source data sets or your relationships. Because if it's a materialized table, you could also calculate hash values, for example. And if you have the hash value, you could also have a virtualized. I would keep the virtualization as views. I would use the virtualization feature, the views for satellites. And if you have the hubs and links materialized, you can perform a lookup with the business key from the white table, from the input table, from the staged table, essentially. You can use the business keys to perform a lookup into the hubs and links to retrieve the hash keys, for example. So we can establish the hash keys again. Yeah, but the biggest problem is the GDPR issues, the separation of the data. But yeah, I've done this. So yeah, that's how you do it essentially. So the basic approach essentially how you would virtualize a raw data vault on top of a data lake. Those are the concerns you have to deal with. So good performance, materialize the hubs and links, and you might also want to have pit and bridge tables, for example, in some cases. So those are pits, bridges, but also hubs and links. From a query perspective, they are your indexes. They index your data on the data lake. Those indexes, we build them by ourselves. It's not done by the data lake technology, right? So we build those indexes, we maintain them, but it's just an index in that sense. It's hubs, links, bridge tables, and pit tables are indexes into your data, essentially. That's what you want to have for performance reasons. The satellites I would virtualize, but be aware of the GDPR stuff. Great if you don't have personal data on the data lake, then it's easy, right? So then problem solved. But if there's personal data in it, that's another story. And then you can also virtualize the business vault on top. You can have satellite splits if you really want that. I would try to reduce satellite splits. And in the end, your performance, at least for the end users, when they query your system, is not driven by the data vault here. It's really driven by the information marts. And what I would suggest is create a flat and white dimension model. So you have just fact entities essentially with the dimension attributes fully denormalized into the facts. Once that is flat and white, based on Parquet, we can essentially query very fast. And that's the idea. That's what you have to produce. Flat and white information mart entities. Fully denormalized fact entities, essentially. And what we do is here, I'm solving this problem that you get data coming in from the source, and it's defined by the source system. That's a source system model. And your goal is to produce a target information model, which is defined by the end user, not by the source system. The end user will define either directly or indirectly by giving you a mockup for the dashboard. They will define what they want. And now I'm using essentially the concepts of data vault to break your white tables apart into smaller chunks so I can restructure them and rejoin them for my target, essentially. That's what I'm doing. So again, I'm identifying the business keys, I'm identifying the relationships, I'm identifying the descriptive data and breaking it apart. And to ensure good performance, I really wanted to use essentially materialized hubs, links, and PRT tables, bridge tables. That's what I would do for performance, essentially. And that's it. The rest is done by the information marts. Especially, I mean, that's what the user only queries information marts, essentially. They are fully materialized, essentially. That's on a Hadoop cluster, for example, or data lake approach, essentially. That's the basic idea. So that's what gives you the performance, essentially. Does Data Vault for DBT support this approach? I had a discussion on the Data Dreamland conference last year, actually, in 2024. And I had a discussion on this, and there are some internal discussions. If you have a project where you want to try this out, get in touch with us so we can essentially, it's nice to have a customer on the for the implementation and not just build something into the blue or something, right? So yeah, if you find this interesting, get in touch with us and talk to us. That's the idea. Cool, good question. So yeah, if you have a question like this, use this form here behind this URL sfr.e/dbfriday. That's where you can submit a question like this. This one came from this form. where you can also upload a drawing picture if you want, or a team picture if you want, whiteboard picture, anything that we can publish essentially. If you have other questions for DBT and Wascape, for example, we have more professional people who know the tools a bit better than me. And that's behind scalefree.to/webinars. That's where you can sign up for those webinars, which are on a monthly basis, but with real tool experts, not me. I'm more on a conceptual basis, essentially. All right. And if you can't wait for until next Friday to get your answers, your questions answered, then sign up for the Data Innovators Exchange. That's a forum-style community where you can essentially ask questions and you get answers from the teams, from both the Scale-Free team and the Ignition Data team in Australia. So we can work actually 24 hours a day. Yeah, seriously. And answer your questions, essentially. That's a cool thing, which means they're a bit faster than me, where I'm doing this only once a week. All right, cool. That's it for today. Enjoy your weekend. It's coming up now. That's actually the day of Friday is always the introduction for the weekend. Still have to work a couple of hours, but that's what's coming up. See you next Friday, guys. Thank you, guys.